Excellent. Well, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you.
Glad to hear it. I we spoke years ago for a different project, but you have 100 of them, so there's always a new one to talk about. Um, you, I would imagine, are as in demand as anyone when it comes to film music. What what makes you say yes to a project?
Uh, it's a combination of things. It's the script, first of all, the story.
Mm.
If it resonates with me, if I've not approached the theme before, and then it's the combination between the script, the director, the producers, the cast, and the schedule.
Yeah, well,
So when all these things seem right to me, it seems a good reason to go.
is it more likely that you say yes, or maybe even less likely when it's someone you've worked with before? Not necessarily because you don't get along, but maybe it's just they have a certain theme to their work and I don't want to repeat myself kind of situation.
No, I tend to be rather loyal to the directors who are loyal themselves to me. And if you look at my filmography, I've been shuffling along with directors on and on because I've dreamed. I think when I was a teenager and dreaming of becoming a film composer, I've dreamed of relationships like Hitchcock and Herman and Truffaut and Delerue and um, Nino Rota and Fellini. So because I knew by listening to the music, aside from the movies, that they had a style,
Yeah.
strong by themselves, but then working again and again with the director, their style crystallized in something new and something different and something stronger, maybe sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think when you look at the long-term director-composer relationships, the ones that people come back to, the ones that people kind of tie them together, it does become that situation where when you think of a director's work, you're thinking of the music. And when you think of the composer, the images you're thinking of, with John Williams, you're probably thinking of a Steven Spielberg image. They're always going to be tied together. And I think it's a very rare and special thing because it's the combination of visual and auditory and you don't get it that often. Even the people who work together a lot, it's very rare that you pair them together. I think one of the things that makes your work so special is that multiple filmmakers sort of you've paired with in a way where the work is in conversation with each other in a way that everyone can appreciate.
Yeah, no, I've been very fortunate about that because when you start working on a project, there's always an unknown. It's a terra incognita. You have no idea where you're going to go and what the director will allow you to do. And working with Guillermo, for example, is an open field. I know that I can. He's happy for me to surprise him, to try things that I've not tried before, and this strong trust allows the collaboration to fly and to be more imaginative, I suppose. Because what I do is use my imagination. That's the work. You try to find somewhere in my imagination the sound, the melodies, the chords that will be the soul of the film. So when the director trusts you and give you the keys, even though of course we collaborate and exchange, and I can change routes and approach. It's of a huge importance.
Oh yeah, I've talked about this with a lot of composers. I think the way you interact with the director is so telling. And even I think the way a director can tell you no, because at a certain point they're going to have to say, you're going in this direction, but this should be going in this direction. But it's the way in which they tell you, like, listen, this work is amazing. You're doing things I could never do, but the picture in my head has a sound that's more in one direction than the other. How can we tinker? And I've interacted with Guillermo before. I would imagine it's a very positive, talk, because like you said, it's very creative. It's go express yourself. Like, listen, I'm making stop motion animation. Like, I am all about creativity right now. Show me what you got, and then we'll pare it down to what actually is going to be in the movie. Because at the end of the day, you're writing, no matter what movie you're working on, you're writing more music than we're going to eventually hear. So it's how do we find the best 90 to 120 minutes or longer in some cases, but you know what I mean? You're finding the like you said, sort of the soul of the project. And even within your your score? What's the soul of the score?
No, you're right. And you know, on Shape of Water, it was the same start.
Yeah.
It was an open field, and you know, I gave ideas, and Guillermo was always excited, and sometimes he wanted more because I'm sometimes a bit too restrained. I'm a bit shy to
Yeah.
you know, coming from my European background of filmmaking. And he would push me. Sometimes I would say that it had to be restrained because I felt that the movie at that time, at that moment, needed to be more internal, that we should be more with the characters than the action. But I think we share that with Guillermo. We like the characters. We like to play with the characters and more than the situations.
Yeah.
And it gives a lot of gravitas and depth to his films, I think, because that's why we love his films, because there's the characters, we share their emotions. And if we were just playing the situation with the music, it will unbalance that, you know.
Totally. I think it's a great example of like describe those movies to someone and they can sound very basic. You know, somebody's grandma may not want to watch The Shape of Water. Well, it's about this like fish monster and this lake, and like, all right, never mind. But if you played them just a clip of the score, they go, oh, this is completely different sound than I would have expected. I think the same with Pinocchio. Everyone has a very specific version of that in their head, and a lot of times it is the Disney, you know, animated one, but you know, or it's the source material. So when you can completely sort of recalibrate someone's mind from what they expected to hear, it also opens them up to what they're going to see. You know, because you're, especially with people you've worked with before, you're coming on early enough that you're almost watching it evolve at the same time. It's the, you know, it's the opposite of I was just talking to Nathan Johnson, they're like, oh, you have 3 weeks, here's the finished film, we need 2 hours of music, go. You now have 2 hours, and you know, it's such an organic process when you're there from the beginning. You can have a voice that you literally are shaping the film in a way.
Yeah, even though the work, maybe not on Pinocchio, because the songs had to be written way before, but for the score, there's never enough time. It's always a crazy deadline. I think I wrote these 2 hours of music in and including the recording in 2 months. So it's, you know, it's a huge daunting task.
Yeah.
But that's what we're trained for as film composers. We're trained to go fast and work hard. But all the conversations are some kind of bridges, you know, that when you first start to work with the director, it's just, you know, there's a river between you and him, or sometimes a channel with a few miles. So you need to create bridges or bring him to you, and you have to make it's like diplomacy, you know, or compromise. You need to always exchange and find
speaking different
middle
languages.
grounds.
Yeah.
And in a different language, of course.
Right. The visual medium, the sound medium, it's you can tell, I think, when you have a composer and a director find that voice together. And sometimes it's the first time they work together, sometimes it takes a couple times, but everything you were saying is true. There's that moment where the water's been drained and you're both speaking the same language, and it shows on the screen. And I think that's the only way you have, especially with Pinocchio, you know, you guys are working on songs together, not just scores. Guillermo told a very funny story about like sending you lyrics and it being like, all right, we can work with this. Maybe I should write all of I wouldn't go that far, like, you know, the movie. But like the idea of that conversation probably can't happen the first time you guys meet. You would probably be like, what a presumptuous guy. He's gonna write the songs too. Go make your movie. Come on. Like it takes having to know the guy and go, oh, this is not an ego thing. This is almost like an adorable, like, what if I could do a Pinocchio song? Can we do it? Is it possible? That you can tell it comes out in the work in a way. It's always very heartening to see, because it is rare. Like you were saying before, it's only so many filmmakers who have that relationship with their composer.
Because also some directors, and we've mentioned a few, you know, the relationship between John Williams and Spielberg, or Nino Rota and Fellini, it's such an intimate relationship of two people who love music, of course, differently, because one is a professional musician, the other one is a director, but the passion, the love for music in general and for music in films allows these bonding, these bridges that I was mentioning. So with Guillermo, for example, he loves music. He loves music in cinema. He loves music in his films. He can sing. he's it's joyful for him to listen
Right.
to music and participate. Some directors don't have that quality. They can be scared. They don't really know how to communicate about it, and it's the goal to aim for the composer to try and bring the director to understand and offer him options so that he can appreciate what is feasible, what is possible in his film.
Right, because they might have a sound in their head and they don't necessarily know how to communicate if you don't have the language of music. It also can just be like, well, what is your taste? Like beyond movies, like what music do you like to listen to? Let's backtrack to that. And you may find out, oh, that filmmaker likes Taylor Swift. Okay, I didn't expect that answer. That might inform something about the type of music, not necessarily for this movie, but how I want to structure it to get their interest level, to get the conversation going. And I think once you start the conversation and find that language like we were talking about, I think that's kind of when your work can begin. Because until then, how do you like you said, freedom's great, but if you have the entirety of music, there's no way to narrow it down to like, well, what continent are we on first if we're starting here? So I think, like you said, the conversation is so important, and clearly, especially with Guillermo and with other filmmakers, you've been able to have it consistently to the point where there's several gold statues littering around your house at the moment. So there's evidence that it is working out for you.
Yeah, but as I said, it's not just by pure magic. It's by strong reflection, it's experience, it's desire also. I have many French composers that would never do that. They would never be a film composer because it's too demanding on that level. They want to create their own music, their way and in their studios, or writing, concert music, and that's what they do. They could not bear sharing that with somebody else and having to do this. It's a group thing, it's a group effort, and it's a team effort that we do when you work on a film. I'm as important as the cinematographer, the screenwriter, the sound mixer. We're together, and once you've understood that, I think it helps a lot.
Right. When a film works, it's because all the levels are working. And when the audience like spontaneously cheers at something, it's partly the visuals, it's obviously the storytelling, but there is a component of the music swells up to get you to swell up, and it takes a very specific, I think, type of musician. Like you're saying, there are composers who could be the best in the industry, but it's not their language, it's not their comfort level. They look at Argo and they see a movie. They never see like, oh, what the music for that. That's just a movie. That's what people go to see. It takes, I think, a very specific musical voice to be able to be given sometimes a finished film and go, well, what's the music to this? Or given a script and go, well, what do you think the sound is that before there's a picture? It's a very specific, and I'm sure to people who don't do it, peculiar talent to be able to look at movies like that. But it's what makes, I think, the language of cinema so interesting, is that there are people who can approach it from not even visuals, but just the sound of a film before there's sound. It's like, I can't do it. I look at it and I see like annoyances.
It's a mix of your education as a musician, your culture as an artist, that goes from cinema to visual arts to music to dance to whatever you want, and it's the way a director is ready to share that with you, and as many options you have in your hand to communicate, because sometimes it's by some instinctive sensations, emotions that you can share. I don't know if you mention Vermeer or Hopper or Pollock, it means something musically. Or Miro, John Miro, it means something to me. It means something. For a director who's working with his eyes all day long, having my synesthetic brain exchanging with him, it makes it easier.
Oh yeah, it is very much a third language. Whatever two languages are being spoken, this third combination of I say a painter, you see a picture, I hear a sound. When we put it together, when done right, magic happens, and very much the work has spoken for itself for a long time with you. And I think there's a reason that, as we wrap up for this one, the music is getting such attention, because it is taking a thing that I think very much could be familiar and giving you a whole new language to it, and it opens you up to go on a much different adventure with it, because the sound is leading you along in a, and not an ostentatious way, but in this way of, this is going to be a little different, but I've got you. And
especially in animation movies,
Yeah.
you know, especially with little puppets, you know, they're just little objects. So
Oh, yeah.
the music has to expand the emotions without being obvious and heavy and
Yeah.
you know, saccharine and all that, but it has to connect an invisible link between the little puppet and the animators, who are like actors, you know. So between, I wouldn't say puppet, between the actors and the audience, so that the audience can feel what the puppet is feeling, and what the actors are feeling. It's the same for me. You know, I treated Pinocchio like if I was treating actors on a set, except that they need a bit more.
Yeah. Well,
Just a bit more.
That's why the end of the movie works so well, is because it's everything is coming together, and the music is giving you the emotion, but not all of the emotion. There's a world where there's too much. Like you said, it's saccharine. It's imposing on you the emotions that you're supposed to feel. And I think because it's just there, kind of like not even pushing you, but just kind of like got its hands on your shoulders, being like, oh, you can feel what you feel. Go feel that. It's okay.
I think we respect the audience too much, you know, to not push them with stupidity.
No, and I think that's a hallmark of your career, and a reason why you're so in demand and considered one of the best, and why this is such a successful musical film, beyond animated film, beyond film, musical film. There's a reason it works.
It's full of music. I think there's 2 hours of music with the songs, and it's just it's a very and that's how Guillermo presented to me first. He said it was a musical movie, you know. So I'm glad. You know what's the most emotional for me is when I'm in a screening watching the film with an audience, and I can hear people being really moved. Yeah. Especially at the end of the film, during Ciao Papa, the song, and at the end of the film, they're so moved. I can, you know, you hear people sobbing, and they're just watching little puppets, which means how strongly these puppets have become real people, actors, and how we help, I think, with our work with Guillermo to bring this emotion through, cut through the screen.
You literally gave life to an inanimate object, so it's something you should be very proud of. Thank you. My pleasure, as always. Thank you so much for doing this. There's a reason why you're one of the best, and also it's just it's the descriptions of it. It's the way that you're able to explain it, because like I said, I have 2 guitars and they sit on my wall because I wanted to break them the first time I tried them. If you can't, you know, being able to speak that language is very specific, and being able to get people to understand it and appreciate it is its own talent. So you should, for all those reasons and more, be very, very proud.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, as always.
Happy New Year.
Likewise. Thank you.